Okay, so I think it works now. Perfect. So thank you, Annabelle, for the invitation and for the introduction. Let me just check if Mr. Johannes VOGEL, can you hear me also? I'm not sure. Mr. VOGEL, can you hear me on Zoom?
Can you hear them on Zoom, Mr. Vogel?
Very poorly. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, but Mr. VOGEL, vous entendez, Monsieur VOGEL? Mais moi, je... Okay, perfect. So sorry for these technical issues. So thank you. So I think Annabelle already introduced the panel, so I won't speak much longer. I just wanted to thank you for being here with us on Zoom, and I really appreciate your participation to the forum and the time you take to share your experience on such a pressing issue. So before we start talking about pedagogical tools, I think it's important to talk about audiences and question the targets these tools are created for. So maybe to start with, could each of you say a few words very briefly about your institution, its mission and your audiences, both traditional ones and the ones you would like to reach? I don't know, maybe Christine Causse, you would like to start with the aquarium NAUSICAÁ?
Vous m'entendez? Bon, alors je vais commencer par une présentation rapide de NAUSICAÁ, donc qui est le Centre national de la mer et qui a ouvert en 91, donc il y a un petit peu plus de 30 ans, à Boulogne-sur-Mer, dans les Hauts-de-France. Alors, on est un aquarium, mais aussi on est un centre de culture sur l'océan.
Sorry, on the wrong channel. It's an aquarium with the main connection being between men and the sea, people and the sea. So maybe pre-COVID, 850,000 visitors per annum, 20% schools, 30% of people from abroad, since Brexit mostly coming from Belgium. And about half of our visitors have already come to visit to NAUSICAÁ for a second time. Audience mostly families with rather young children.
Presentation. Agnès Parent, maybe a few words about the Muséum national d'histoire naturelle.
Alors, est-ce qu'on peut lancer la petite vidéo ou...
Comment?
Bon, j'ai pas...
Can we start the video, please? I didn't talk about the age of the Natural History Museum. Maybe it's 13 locations open to the public, and I will show you a video that shows you all of the activities, because sharing knowledge is one of our activities. We also have research, expertise, collections, curation, and preservation of these 63 million collections. So we're trying to get the video going.
Peut-être je peux parler de notre fréquentation, donc 2019, hein, évidemment.
In terms of numbers, 2019 was the last full year that we've had. 3.9 million visitors on all of the 13 different locations. You can also add the traveling exhibition because we are specialists there. And you can watch the video, and there's no sound, so maybe I could talk during the video. And this shows all of our activities. 3.2 million visitors. So we have the traveling as well, libraries, our website and social networks, another 6 million on the website, and over 600,000 subscribers to our different social networks. And so we have over 6 million visitors to compare that going through the Jardin des Plantes. So we have different content, different knowledge. So this is our audience, mostly families, differences depending on the locations. So families with a certain level of culture, trying to expand our public profile a bit. Satisfied tend to come in, first of all, to discover it and then to have a convivial experience. And they're interested in the scientific culture and the natural history. Maybe we'll talk about our goals in a moment. Yes.
We lost Mr. Vogel on Zoom, so in the meantime, maybe we just keep discussing the three of us. Maybe another question about the audience. Did you notice some changes these last years in your audience in terms of audience habits or a kind of audience? Is there any evolution, transformation, and also their level of knowledge on these environmental issues, on climate, oceans, biodiversity loss at at NAUSICAÁ, for example?
Alors,
yes, the audience is definitely more informed on environmental issues and increasingly interested. We have 58,000 animals, so 1,600 different species. And so there's a society issue as well regarding animals' welfare. So animal welfare. So our goal is to demonstrate and show the environmental issues, but not leave the visitors alone after that. People want to act. People want to know what they can do to help. So we want to be able to orient them towards action, positive action, and solutions.
For you, Agnès Parent?
Alors déjà, depuis quelques...
Well, over the last few years, along with our strategy that we've put out in our scientific and cultural review that was just signed off by our board, we want to reach a broader audience, especially regarding these society issues. So extending our reaching a bigger audience means a more diverse public that doesn't necessarily come into the museum. So we've got lots of actions there on location, on our physical locations. We're trying to develop more popular actions, more open and easier, more accessible, because we have Unionation Festival that's in our gardens, and that involves a lot of people. We have festive weekends with a different way of approaching knowledge, and we have nocturnal sessions for young adults. We have Odyssey, the Sensorial Odyssey, which is a different type of exhibition, trying to reach a different type of audience still. So new actions to reach a broader audience. Also, we have a policy going out towards other people and going towards and becoming greener, developing schemes and content that's more participative regarding issues in society and also then coming up with solutions. So we're working on this policy in digital content. And so this green alley, our policy is going outside the walls that we're going to develop and implement to go into the empty areas where there isn't a lot of culture available, so we would get a less aware public, if you will. And so the issues that we're dealing with, we have to look at it as how an institution, we can develop actions to reach greater audiences. We have a really nice group of audience, a group of people that come in often, but we want to develop this and reach a bigger audience. Okay, thank you.
Trying to reconnect to Zoom. Okay.
Recording in progress.
So, Mr. Vogel, I think you're back on Zoom. I apologize for this issue.
Are you back with us? Are you back with us, Mr. Vogel?
Mr. Vogel? Hello? sorry for this. So can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
And can you hear him?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So
I can
maybe
only
just let me
hear
ask
you.
the first question I ask to your colleagues. So maybe could you just briefly describe the mission of the Naturkunde Museum in Berlin and say some words about the audience, your traditional audience, and also the audience maybe you would like to reach who's not coming yet to your museum. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, like many, you can hear me, yeah? Is that all right? Okay. Like many natural history museums, we traditionally had a family audience. So since 2015, our audience is predominantly young adults, 16 to 40-year-olds, and that is the audience we wanted to target. So we particularly focus on working with these people about their concerns, their worries for the future of the world and the future of our planet, the future of mankind, the future of nature. They are the ones who will inherit the future. They are the ones who will have a stake in shaping the future. And this is something that perhaps not goes for every museum. So Paris, as you know, 5 million visitors, will be a bit difficult to get 5 million if you focus entirely on young adults. But with us, we reach about 800, and especially through listen. So we listened in what they want, what they are interested in, and then developed programming together with them. So we've kept our family audiences, but we've really engaged the politically active, young, dynamic, urban middle class.
Great. Thank you for this presentation. Maybe we can now move to the core question of our panel, which is about eco-pedagogical formats and tools you've developed in your respective museums and aquarium. So how do you raise awareness about these issues? And maybe we can start with the classical tool, which is creating exhibitions, scientific exhibition. I know at NAUSICAÁ you have a large experience on creating exhibitions, and I know when we prepared this panel, you mentioned a lot of different exhibitions, and we could see through this exhibition an evolution of the consideration of this issue, both in terms of content, of narrative, and also of format and scenography and digital tools you've been using.
Oui, alors...
Well, we have a mission. We're a touristic center. So our main goal is for people to discover and be delighted in our water areas. We also have an educational mission with a lot of schools that come. So we have tools and special events for schools. And then we have two aspects. There's a scientific talks explaining the information to the audience about the information that's related to the ocean. And there's scientific production by NAUSICAÁ specialists working in various programs with other aquariums on, say, animal reproduction, rearing techniques, and improving knowledge. So the mission is to mobilize people to turn our visitors into ocean citizens who are ready to be active. We've got 10,000 square meters of area for where historically it was men and coasts, and that was on ecosystems, coastline ecosystems, so to present the local ecosystems, so the Northern Sea, the Mediterranean, tropical ecosystems. And then we got interested in other issues in the high seas with adventure and adventure space in 2018. So the high sea is the area in the sea that's beyond the national jurisdiction, so they're international waters. And in 2017, there were negotiations in the United Nations to preserve and sustainably develop biodiversity in the high sea. So far from the seasides, far from the coastlines, where no one could see. It was about informing people and raising awareness amongst the visitors and see what the connections were for people with the ocean, be it daily, because we have lots of high seas activities, shipping, for instance. Most everyone has, a lot of them have gone across the sea, telecommunication and the undersea cables, and then high seas in ecological equilibriums. Half of the air oxygen is produced by phytoplankton. So it's the connection there between people's lives and what goes on in the high seas. So a 60-meter long basin with some characteristic species, manta rays, and many fish, and other tours with projections, with screenings, interactive installations. We had Thomas Pesquet. We were lucky to have him, and so the visitors could get information on the biodiversity governance issues. And, of course, we looked at other topics that are crucial today. That's the climate. So we can see the evolution there. We did this in 3 different phases. In 2003, we had the first show called On the Planet, looking at what the global warming was and how it was related to human activities and what could be the potential impacts. So we did that again in 2015, and it was called Ocean and Climate. So it was just before the COP21 in Paris. So it was important to explain why the ocean had to be a central focus of these discussions and these international negotiations. So the exhibition that puts the ocean into the focus and looking at climate change and saying that the climate change today and global warming is right in your backyard. So we had glasses and 3D and special effects, and with and the film's theme was the impact of climate change and global warming on French coastlines. So, and we're doing it again called Now in the Eye of the Climate and Climate Change in 2020 using new technology. And we use a company that does video mapping. So we have a 200 square meter room where we project on the wall, 7 meters high and on the floor. So the idea is to immerse people in the climate events and to compel people to act. And so then we have a space where we can offer actions, where we have NAUSICAÁ challenges, where people can choose what to do, like take a picture, share it on the social networks. I have a video, I think.
Non, elle peut faire aussi. Alors c'est quelle vidéo? La deuxième vidéo. Non, on peut pas. La deuxième vidéo.
Oui.
Do you want to add a few words about the video, or?
Alors,
Well, the video lasts 5 minutes and a half. There are no comments, so there's no voiceover on it. So it's really just about being immersed in these extreme events and showing solutions to adapt and adjust and to limit our emissions. So it's calling on people's emotions, and then it's followed up with a space where you present what's being done internationally and showing what we do at NAUSICAÁ and what are the actions regarding the climate, how we recycle heat, how we recycle water, and then there are individual actions that can be taken based on to mitigate the global warming effects.
The presentation of the evolution of this exhibition. Maybe if we move a little bit forward and go beyond exhibitions, I think at the Muséum National d'Histoire Naturelle you have other ways of involving the audience, and especially the one who already go to the museum and see exhibitions. So you have different programs and projects, and also you work on this with the Naturkunde Museum in Berlin on what we call participative science involving citizens.
Oui, alors au muséum.
Well, yes, in the museum, as I was talking about developing and reaching different audiences, of course we have to carry out actions that everyone can relate to, whatever be their level of awareness or interest. So, of course, there's a certain number of actions I've already talked about to give people the desire to get them interest in science and natural sciences. So we have the collection, and the relationship to that is very important for us. And there's new technology. We have a VR booth where we test a lot of things, trying to reach citizens. We're developing lots of actions in sensitization, awareness raising, and action. And then we really, once people are aware, then you have to give them the opportunity to take action. So there's volunteering. We've got 360 volunteers we had, but with COVID it was very complicated to manage all of that, manage our volunteers. So we've stopped that strategy for right now, but we would like to kick that off again. So we've got a lot of events, spotlighting of and valuing volunteering. We also have some university educational programs and training how we can get people involved in research and then collections, and simultaneously the museum was a bit of a pioneer in what we call science and participative research. How you define a museum, because there are many different definitions. And of course it's about research. It's supporting expertise and having expertise support researchers involved in research projects in several different areas, but it's also a tool for sharing knowledge. So we develop lots of participative science projects, and we're trying to work today on this connection between the participant and visitor, how you make that connection there. We try and compel our visitors, encourage our visitors to become participative scientific citizens. So we're working with the Museum for Naturkunde, working on this program called Change is Nature. Mr. Vogel perhaps would give us a presentation of the program. It's really interesting because it's about documenting our perception of change and our perception of our environment. And it's in the finalization phase and should be available in September 2022. So actions and science is a good driver. Participative research are good drivers to make that connection between research and citizens.
Question to Mr. Vogel, but he disappeared again.
Recording in progress.
He's here again. Yeah, I like these, both the volunteering policy you have, because it's not really, we are not so familiar in France to these kind of practices, I think, in museums, and also the fact that any citizen can contribute to scientific research and really develop a long-term relationship with the museum and the professionals working in museum. I really think it's an interesting connection we can make with cultural and scientific institutions on that. So, Mr. Vogel, if you're here with us and if you hear me, I don't know if vous l'entendez. Mr. Vogel? Hello? Hello, Mr. Vogel. I'm not sure he can hear us, or it's a connection issue. Okay, I wanted him to talk about another program and another way of talking about environmental issues, because at the Naturkunde Museum in Berlin they have a Kunstnatur program, which is an art program within the museum, and they invite artists in
Recording in
residence,
progress.
and they're invited to question the role of a museum in the 21st century and question the issue of Anthropocene, and work with the curators of the museum and produce works of art and projects that are then presented and exhibited at the museum. And they have this year a partnership with the Berliner Biennale. So, Mr. Vogel, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Mr. Vogel? Or otherwise, I move to the next question. Hello? Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, anyway. So I would like to move to the last big question I had for you, which is about the role and responsibility of a natural history museum and an aquarium today, because we've talked about audiences, about eco-pedagogical tools, and I'm wondering in the end if this green advocacy works, because, and I wanted also Mr. Vogel to talk about that, because he's very critical about what Natural History Museum have achieved in this context. So maybe we can go back to NAUSICAÁ and the relation you have with the audience, because you've mentioned at the very beginning that the audience was really demanding, more and more demanding about environmental issues, and especially on animal welfare. So I know you've really you've taken this into consideration, and you've really developed a proposal about your role as an aquarium and caring about animal welfare.
Yes, those are very important issues. Well, on one hand, we have to be exemplary in what we do, how we communicate, how NAUSICAÁ acts, and how we conduct ourselves inside our within our walls. In the boutique, for instance, it's fair trade. The way we use energy, so we communicate that to our audiences. Everything we do there. We also have restaurant, and so we have a sustainable program. It's called Mr. Goodfish, working with consumers, targeting consumers. We work with Ifremer here in France. It's a research institute in France, and we have a list of species that are recommended. We have that in the exhibitions. We also have it on the social networks. We work with the restaurant providers and markets this is a way to help our visitors to get involved and take better care of the oceans. We also spotlight the work of our carers, the carers for the animals. They explain what they do, and it goes from reproduction to rearing to improving knowledge about species. We communicate on our partnerships. We have partnerships in the field, associations that are local, one that's working on restoring coral reef in the Maldives, another one tracking fish. So we offer the expertise of our animal specialists. If you have to tag sharks or identify threatened coral, we support actions and exhibits, and on the websites we try and encourage visitors to donate to these associations. So there's in the aquarium, we have the conservation of coral. There's that initiative that was launched by Monaco so that we can maintain the cultures that exist. So conserving, improving, and gaining and sharing knowledge.
Different kind of actors, politicians, civil society, industries, and to play a sorry. Maybe another question for the Muséum national d'histoire naturelle. How do you find the right balance between scientific research and activism? Because I know you've been questioning yourself as an institution of your role and responsibility with how to get more engaged with the civil society and NGOs. So,
alors ça, c'est une question fondamentale. Alors
that is a fundamental question. The Natural History Museum's position is very clear. We are committed, but not militant, not activists. What we do is we expose scientific facts, and we explicitly show the research, their methods, and what we know and what we don't know. That's important too. And the goal being that everyone can develop their own opinion and they can change their actions, especially they can develop their critical thinking. And that's fundamental today in all of the information that we get inundated with these days. So as regards the museum community, we do share a lot. And there are other museums. I'm thinking about the Museum of London, a step ahead of us at this stage, talking about how to develop people who defend nature, nature defenders, as it were. So in the community today, we're looking at how we have AMSTI, that's the Scientific, Technical, and Industrial Cultural Association. I'm the president, and so the question of the limit between, say, commitment and activism, we're seeing that in our professions. There's a whole young generation, well, younger than myself at least, who come in with different ideas, different ways of imagining what we do, our work and our research as well. So very interesting and foundational questions, and that's going to be the subject for our next AMSTI conference in June, 22nd to 24th, where we're going to look at limits. What is our role? Our position is very clear. Now, how we can, what we can do with the youth who are increasingly active, and they want more from us. So how can people commit? How can you make the connection between knowledge, explanation, and today what I can do and what we can do together? How can we think about spotlighting positive action from civil society, things that work and maybe things that don't work? I think the debate is really going to drive us in the upcoming years.
Maybe someone in the audience would like to react to this last question about ethics in museums, or any other comment or experience that has been shared.
Merci. Bonjour.
Hello. You mentioned it, but I was just wondering, we see that the ecological, environmental commitment in your presentations, but how do we see that professionally? Christine Causse, you talked about that. Choosing the material that you use for staging and your restaurant, your food, and your boutique. Can you tell us what you do in the Natural History Museum? Did you want to add something to that? Yeah, I did mention it. We work digitally. We work on waste management. That's part of the CSR, but it's an area where we're moving forward every day, be it in the public areas or our in-house functioning. At the museum, that is one of our scientific and cultural projects. I think we have someone here who's in charge of SD in the museum. Of course, we have to be exemplary. We can't talk about SD or global warming or biodiversity protection without ourselves making efforts. It's not always easy, though, when you have historical buildings. You can't do whatever you feel like doing. We've got a lot of heritage, a lot of cultural heritage, a lot of assets, a lot of things that you have to maintain. But we're thinking about it. That's I think we have another presentation on that later. But now, as regards the exhibitions, we were the first museum to have a life cycle of an exhibition from beginning to end. And this enabled us to identify the sources. Teresa Bianchi is here as well, and she worked on that project. This gave us food for thought and gave us pause, because all these things aren't necessarily common sense. Sometimes you're using common sense, but it's not the right solution. So I think there's support, training, rethinking necessary, and all that to adapt the best practices at all levels. So in our exhibitions, we're going to be kicking off this procedure. We did start in 2017. We'll roll that out more widely, be it choosing materials, donations, sales, whatever. I don't want to go into detail here, but this whole procedure is underway, and we'll reinforce that. But if we put a lot of that stuff in calls for tenders publicly to get the best deals. Now, the sustainable transition, that's a topic for the next roundtable discussion that will be kicking off at 15:45.
Are there any other question? Okay, so we can close this panel. I'm sorry for Mr. Vogel in Berlin, who in the end couldn't really participate to the discussion, and but I invite you to go deeper into the Naturkunde Museum activities and position, which is really an interesting and a critical one. So thank you again, Christine Causse and Agnès for the time you are taking today with us to share your experience and the experience of your institutions. And I think it's a very good transition with the next panel on green practices in museums. Thank you.
Merci, merci.
Merci.